Hi, Linda. How are you?
I'm good, Laura. How are you doing? Just wanted to.
Yeah. Nice.
I got some dedicated baseball fans here.
If they're coming back, you can leave it on.
We have first and second, one out. Bottom six.
For idea.
Yep.
Go.
The Board of Education meeting will now come to order at 6 o'clock. Secretary,
6:30.
oh, 6:30, sorry. 6:30, please call the roll.
All right. Mellon,
Here.
Ponce,
Here.
Australia. Here. Becky,
Here.
Wellington here, Yaffe,
Here.
vote.
Here. Okay, the next one is citizen comments. Do you have anyone present here or on Zoom who wishes to address the board? Nope. No
Just two
hands up.
attendees.
We're all good. Okay. Moving on, the next thing is the consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions on the consent agenda?
I have a request to move something out of the consent agenda,
Okay,
and that is the naming of the treasurer. I just think that should have more visibility when we assign a treasurer each year. Part of our fiscal responsibility.
Okay. you can move that up. This is great. Item. So. So I need one motion for the remainder, except the treasurer's appointment of treasurer, or the treasurer's report.
The appointment of the treasurer is part of the consent agenda.
Okay.
It's- Yeah,
Oh, okay, so we'd like to take out E, so I'd like to have a motion to approve the rest, except annual renewal list.
yeah. No, it's not the whole.
It's just the item.
Just
Treasury report G.
But you said not the report.
Okay.
It's not the treasurer's report, it's the naming of the treasurer on an annual basis. We're naming Andy Searle as our treasurer.
So all items in it. You're right.
Okay, so we will remove E to a separate item, and for the vote, we would like to vote on the remainder of the consent agenda, except E. You have a motion? So moved.
Second.
Mellon,
Yes.
Ponce,
Second. Oh, yes, sorry.
Yaffe,
Yes.
Australia,
Yes.
vote.
Yes.
Wellington, yes. Becky,
We haven't done that in a while. Is there a time that we would do that?
So you would do it now.
Okay,
So you need to make a separate recommendation for it and just try to use a similar framework to what we've done with our other recommendations. So recommendations for the Board of Education approve. The annual renewal list is also approved the treasurer, identified for this year as Andy Searle. 2021-22 school year.
all right, so we would recommend that we name the treasurer Andy Searle and include the annual renewal list. So moved.
Second.
Yaffe,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
Mellon,
Yes.
Ponce,
Yes.
Australia,
Yes.
vote.
Yes.
Wellington, yes.
And the next thing we have is, were there any questions from the Monday call? Okay, let's hear the district report from the business office.
I've just got a few items for the business office. The first one, let me get my glasses on here. It's something that we do every single year. It's a transfer of funds from the operations and maintenance fund to the debt service fund. Back in 2007, the district issued debt certificates, I should say. And these were used to make the final payment on the golf course. But they do not have a levy associated with them. So the money has to come from operating funds. And that's what you're approving to do, is move funds from the operations and maintenance fund and move that into the debt service fund, where we make the payments for all of our debt service. So that's what you're doing. It's a budgeted item that's already in the budget, but it does require a separate approval by the school board. So the debt service principal interest is the 246,000 and some change. And that's what we're asking or recommending that you approve that tonight. Any questions on that particular? All right. The next item is the resolution to approve the band band uniform financing. This was approved by the school board last year already, but it didn't get, the deal didn't get done in last fiscal year essentially. So I talked to the banker again this year. We got the uniforms purchased this year. We have them. But we still have to do the financing. And he said, well, because it's a new fiscal year, we need a new resolution from the school board and it's got to be in the minutes. So it's not something new. It's something you've already approved, but the bank requires that we have a current resolution in place in the board minutes for this year in order for us to do the loan. As I put in the my report, the nice part is we save about 1% of interest on it. So a year later, it's I wouldn't say it's free money, but we'll see what happens when we get the deal done. But at this point, it'll only be about 1.8% interest on the loan. So that's a really great deal. And before it would have been close to around 3%. So that's a nice savings it will be for the school district. So we're recommending that you approve that. Any questions about that one?
Can I jump in for just
Yeah.
a sec for Linda and Mark? Band uniforms last a long time. So while it looks like a large amount, these uniforms, if they're well taken care of, will last 20 years. And we have a very large marching band. So I don't know if you're aware, but we have quite extensive participation. So that's
This is
just a
for,
little history.
yeah, this is 320 uniforms. And typically, we don't have that many band members, but they need to have some spares just in case. So that's why we.
And they do
ordered
take
them.
good care of them.
Yes, they do. They do a fantastic job. The last one is the tentative amended budget. For those of you who remember from our budget talks last year when we were formulating the budget for this year, there was a ton of uncertainty coming into this year with COVID. We had a lot of things that we just didn't know how the year would end up being. And now we do have a much better sense of what this year is at this point. The biggest differences that are included in this budget is mostly federal funding. And the biggest chunk of it is those dollars that we got specifically for coronavirus relief. So there was a huge one back in December that got passed. And then again, there was another large one of 1.9. Now the 1.9 trillion rather, that won't actually come in until next fiscal year, but the one that was passed in December, that's what's included in here for us. And that amounted to about $670,000 of additional federal revenue. So that's accounted for both on the revenue side and the expenditure side. There are also some other federal grants that are smaller, but we picked those up. There were some amendments to those too, as far as our title grants, Title 1 and 2 and 4. So those are minor adjustments that I threw in there. I also included the savings that we got from transportation. We got major savings from that this year because almost half of our year we didn't transport students or did very little. So I adjusted those downward. Now, again, we can't say that's going to be the case for next year, but at least for this budget year, those have been adjusted down, and we should have a slight surplus at the end of this budget year. It's a little bit better than it looked at the beginning of the year, the fiscal year, but this is just a tentative of budget by school code rules. You have to have the budget on display for 30 days before the board officially approves it. You guys, it'll be on the June board agenda for final approval. This is just a tentative one so that we can get it posted on the website and have it available at the business office for people to inspect should they want to. Any questions on that particular one?
I have a question about I'm looking at the budget summary.
Mhm.
It looks like that the deficits compared to budget are coming in the educational and debt service. And then the surpluses are in the operations, maintenance, and transportation, right?
Yeah.
So I based on everything you said, it seems to me that transportation, we would expect to see a surplus. I would expect to see operations and maintenance have more like a deficit, and the educational fund to have maybe be more net, but it's down quite a bit. So what are our overruns in education fund?
Well, that's part of the structural deficit I think I was telling you about before. So those are things that have to be addressed long-term. That's just something that's happened in that fund. Now, part of it I can make up for it with levying, and which I've done in this next levy. You'll see that improve a lot better. You'll see those start to even out in the next budget. But part of it too is just COVID and the uncertainty of not knowing what was going to come through on some of the expenditures. But the biggest part of it in the ed fund is really just because we do have a structural deficit there that we need to address. So
So this is not additional substitutes and.
nope.
and
Nope.
That sort of thing
And
because of COVID.
and the operations and maintenance fund, I put a little bit extra in there thinking I would have to spend more, but it ended up, we got all this federal funding and I was able to offset pretty much all of the COVID expenditures with it. So it was one of those things where I was thinking that there'd be a lot more expenditure in that fund, and that's one where we benefited from those federal dollars, so. Because we used it to pay for PPE, the signage in the building, fixing, going into the bathrooms and making everything touchless and all those sorts of things that we did. We got all federal money to do all that. So
Did the
that
federal
helped.
money pay for our big machines?
yes, it did. So that was nice too. I mean, that really helped out quite a bit. It's very, very helpful for us. A big blessing. Yes, sir.
Can you speak a little bit? I had a conversation with you earlier about it, but speak to the federal funds and how the expectation unfolds with using those in the time frame.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, the money, the 670,000 we're getting this year, just so you know too, it's on a reimbursement basis. So we have to expend the funds, then we send in a quarterly report to the ISB, to Illinois State Board of Education, and they refund us for what we've spent in any given quarter. So some of that 670,000 we're not going to get reimbursed till next fiscal year, just the way it's going to happen. But the huge one, the 1.9 trillion that you heard about this spring, Mundelein High School's portion of that will be $1.4 million. So it's substantial. That again, it all flows through the state. So we're putting together, or Stacy Gorman will be putting together a budget for that with my help, of course, to help her figure out where we want to make those expenditures for it. But she'll put a budget in. We won't have access to that till July 1st, which is the first day of the next fiscal year. And so we'll budget in some of that money, and we've talked about this already administratively. We're looking at spreading that out over 2 years. So we'll have some for next year, and then we'll have also a portion of it. We haven't figured out exactly how we're going to proportion that out, but that'll help us a lot. And Peter and I were talking about this a little bit earlier, but that'll help us, talk about that structural deficit they have. That'll give us a little breathing room to figure that out, to get some administrative pieces in line so we can make some budget cuts and have a couple of years to do that. So we have a little bit of breathing room and say, well, what's a strategic way to do those cuts that'll be very minimal in terms of its impact on our students. So that is also a huge benefit to getting those dollars and being able to spread them out over a couple of years. So
Do we risk the state pulling the funding and losing it if we don't spend it in that first year and dragging it out 2 years, or?
no, that's in the document that says that you have until September 30th of 2024 to spend the dollars. So that's in the federal mandate for how it's being done, and the state can't pull that, I guess you could say. What would happen is if we didn't spend it all, they would say, well, sorry, you didn't, by September of 2024, you didn't turn it in and spend it all, then they'd say, well, we're not going to give you any more. That could happen, but the state wouldn't say you can't have those dollars. As long as we budget them, pay for it, and send in our reports, we'll get the money. I don't have any doubt that'll happen.
Thank you.
Because the state has to flow through those dollars, essentially is what they call it, from the federal government.
I'm sure we have plenty of ways we can spend that money.
Yes, we'll figure it out. We've already got some ideas. Any other questions, budget questions?
Andy, if you don't mind, would you share about what we're doing to be proactive to address the structural? depths that we're
Yeah, we've already had, we had a large budget meeting with our administrative staff. That was all our 12-month administrators. We just did basically a brainstorming situation where we just put everything basically on the table and said, what is it that we have that we're doing that we don't necessarily have to keep? What other ways can we look at more creatively doing things that we can do with less people or not doing a contractual service that we've just done in the past and not thought about too much about it? So we've really just, everything was on the table. We came up with some really good ideas. It's about a 2-hour administrative session. We have another one scheduled for early June. We're going to hone it down a little bit now that we've got some of those initial ideas formulated. The other piece that we looked at too is one of the ideas behind this federal funding is for schools to have some sort of creativity and maybe give schools some opportunities they may not have thought they would have because they didn't have the money to do it. So that's another piece we're looking at. I mean, it seems strange to say, we're going to spend more money on something that we don't do now. But the way we're looking at it is to try to be creative and say, okay, yes, we've got some seed money, as it were, to do something different, let's dream a little bit about what we might want to do. But I'm just, the money guy behind the scenes, I'm saying, yep, you got a 2-year window here. But we're going to have, if you want to sustain this new thing that you've got the money for, we're going to have to make some additional budget cuts to sustain that long term. But again, as I mentioned before, now we have a 2-year window to do that and maybe try some innovative things and then figure out a plan to sustain that over time if that's something we really want to do. So I don't know if that answers your question or if that helps your
Yeah,
thinking.
I have something for that creative bucket.
Yeah.
What seems like an eternity ago, in 2019, when we went to the conference downtown, I attended a subgroup that was entitled Rural Schools in the Crosshairs, perhaps, something like that. Thinking it was about guns in schools, because that was on the agenda at that time, but it wasn't. It was about, we don't have access to teachers. We can't hire and keep teachers and pay what the suburban schools are paying. So what they were exploring was how can we use teachers who have certain expertise or certain talents or can teach certain things and do that virtually and share. So something that's I know is out there that could help in that arena of
Yeah,
creativity.
that's one of the items we talked about broadly was what if we learned from COVID? What things, there's a ton of negative things that have happened, but what positive things may have happened or what ways can we do things differently? And I think that kind of falls under that category as well.
Well, we've so upgraded our infrastructure and access to technology that some of these things that were just ideas can now be implemented.
Absolutely. Kind of push things forward and you may not have tried it before, but you kind of had to under COVID. Didn't have a choice. So
Okay, thank
All
you,
right.
Andy.
thanks.
Principal's office.
Good evening, everyone. Just as an external confirmation, I was talking to the band mother who organizes and makes sure that all the band uniforms are together, and she has a system. It is like Broadway. It's very cool. Give you that kind of feedback. I definitely think they'll last for 20 years. So back in March, I came to this board with a proposal for the start of the school day. I wanted to circle back and give you an update on where we're at with that. Go to the next slide, Paul, please. Just a reminder for those who may have not heard this, just a reminder for everybody who did, there were 3 reasons why we proposed this. Number one, for over a decade, all of our students who will ride the district transportation, the school bus, will arrive 45 minutes before the start of the school day. They are arriving at 7. School day started at 7:45. And they were typically hanging out until 40 minutes after the school day ended, until the bus would load and then take them home. So a bus rider was roughly almost 3 hours at school. Certainly, they could access some of the supports that we have, and many did, but they're still there on an absorbent long time comparatively to any of the other students. So that was one. The research says there's a lot of benefits to the later start. More sleep, less reported health issues, mental health issues, better academic performance, all things that the research overwhelmingly supports for middle school and high school students. And then finally, the piece that we have as staff have worked to have is more availability for collaboration. Often you can collaborate with your colleagues who are teaching the same course through your professional learning communities every Thursday. But often if you had a co-teacher in your classroom, that co-teacher may not have had the same lunch, same prep period, or any other time where you could coordinate or collaborate with that individual. And they're with you maybe all 5 periods of the day. So certainly there's a lot of work there that could be utilized in that kind of environment. So the collaborating with our staff to whom they need to collaborate with is another advantage of having this late start. Also, professional learning communities will continue. We'll talk about that in just a little bit in a minute. We still have the need for staff meetings, departmental meetings, professional development, and that collaborative time. Next slide. No, that's what we're just at. Go one more. Thanks. So the proposal is that the arrangement at this point is that students would arrive at school about 8:30. School would start at 8:40. School would be dismissed at 3:20. And school would, the bus would pick up at 3:25, substantially changing the amount of time that those students have to wait for their bus. Now, this does not change the time for a certified staff. They would still have a start time at 7:25 and an end time at 3:25. And then we will look at our classified staff, who typically mans some of our support centers, to make sure that we are supporting when students are able to come in the building and access those supports in the morning. And I'll talk about that again with some parent feedback that I received along the way. And then finally, we are changing the class periods from 50 minutes to 45. But again, as I mentioned in the last report, because we would eliminate the half days that we were typically doing every 4 to 6 weeks, and reducing the number of late starts, this would end up ultimately only losing about 1 minute per day per period. So you're not losing a total of 5 minutes out of every period every day, but realistically, the math shows 1 minute of loss. All right, next slide. This is just the global view. We are doing this in collaboration with this District 75 because we have a shared transportation agreement with them. The students, the buses that pick up our students go and then pick up their students, or they're picking up their students and then picking up our students afterwards. So we are actually sharing those buses. After they're done doing the D75, they're doing the D120 pickup routes. So this kind of gives you a share of the, at least at this point, where we are with the start times with both the middle school and the high school starting at a later time than the elementary and the intermediate school. There's still discussion going on within District 75 about that as well. And they're working on some busing arrangements.
I was curious, I see the chart. What happens, because I feel like this is really valuable from the research that it says that the later start time, I know students and parents were all on board with it. What happens if we couldn't quite coordinate with 75? What would be the cost or the other options we would have to just add a few buses of our own?
That's a great question. So if I remember right, Andy, please correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that shared service saved us over $1 million.
Not that much.
About that much.
It's about $200,000 a year. It says.
Okay, I'm sorry, maybe it's it's $1 million contract. Okay, so $200,000 is the savings that we incur.
You know how much each bus costs? Is it about 35?
Yeah, I have to look at, that sounds about right. And it depends on whether it's shared or not, so
Okay,
I want to say if it's not shared, it's a lot more than that. I want to say it's closer to 50. Or if it's shared with District 75, it's one half 30.
okay. I guess just if it wouldn't be an option to share, I think this might be something worth spending some of that savings on, because I know students and parents, and I think teachers would benefit from it, so.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what teachers and parents have said, because we did survey them and I wanted to give you some feedback on what their responses were. So out of the staff that responded, overwhelmingly in the 90% range, agreed that this would be the move that we should be making. Questions that they brought up were, well, when are we gonna do things such as PLCs, professional learning communities, staff meetings, and staff development? Where are those things going to happen? They're gonna happen in the mornings. And we've already had some building team discussions about what days and how to organize it. So for example, we want to make sure that our professional learning communities are uninterrupted, that they meet every week. Right now, they meet every week, except if I have to have a staff meeting, we're not having PLCs. And so that course team doesn't meet on the week that we're having a staff meeting. By going a different direction, we can guarantee that PLCs meet every week, uninterrupted, whether we have a staff meeting or not. We can do a staff meeting on a different day. We can do professional development on a different day. And so those are things that we have kind of organized at this point and made sure that we would be able to solve the collaboration problem, but also make sure that we had time for these necessary events. So those are some of their questions that they had brought up. Office hours, when do they have office hours with kids? The morning is still an opportunity for them to meet with students prior to the start of the school day. They can also meet after school if they wish to, although it might go past their day, their contractual day, but they still have the opportunity to meet with students then as well. And then another concern was, well, will students have the opportunity for services, whether come to the math lab before school starts, or I have a robotics team meet after school. Is there an activity bus? We still plan on having the activity bus in the afternoons to take students after, around 5 o'clock, so that after they have practice or they have events, that they can take that bus home. And we are looking into what kind of situations would we best serve students if we did a morning pickup for just activities, and what the need would be. So we'll look at those needs as we get closer as well. So that's from the staff. From the parents, first of all, just little procedures. What we did is the 4 building principals did a Q&A. We did a webinar. We just presented the proposal about the new start time for the schools. And we just laid that out in detail for all 4 school communities. The next week, each school held a specific building Q&A, because Washington parents really don't want to hear Mundelein High School parents ask about what's going to be different about the high school. And nor do high school parents want to hear about another school. So we did that individually, and that worked out well. We had a whopping 9 attendees. If anything, that says that it was well advertised, sent out in many different formats to people. We believe that that's an indication that there's not a lot of resistance to this. There's actually a lot of buy-in to this. And so for that, that was the process. Next, feedback from parents. If you go to the next slide. Thanks. We also sent a survey out to our school community to ask about different parts of the survey that we wanted to hear their responses to. We got over 350 responses. Things that they reported through their data, typically the most often response, students get about 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. And 67% supported the proposal in all. There's about 21% that are in limbo right now. They could go either way. And then certainly there are some people that were not in favor of this. Next slide. Some of the concerns that were brought up through the parent surveys were transportation. Will there be a way for students to come to school early if they'd like to, or stay late if they'd like to? The activity bus, if you will, before and after school. End of the day conflicts. What happens if my child's in athletics and now that the day's a little later, are they going to miss some of their last period class? Well, right now, we do have situations periodically where our students will have to leave for an away event. So in athletics, most often our students will miss a class if they're going to an away game, not a home game, an away game, and they're going to a far away location. If they're going to play Grace Lake, it's not really an issue. If they're going to play Lake Forest, there's a little bit more time and effort for us to get there in a timely fashion. We might be leaving a little bit early from school to do so. That happens now. So that would happen under this as well. And then finally, access to the building in the morning. There are some conversations from parents. You know, I drop my child off in the morning, even though they have the right, they have the ability to take the bus, I drop them off. Can they come into the building? When can they come into the building? When will the building be open? And that's just the staffing of our security staff that we need to address through that process. And also, if students are here, we want them to be able to access the services. So if students are able to attend or come early, we want to make sure the math lab is open at that time so that they can access it. So those are some of the issues that we're going to, depending on what your decision is and how this continues through, those are the things that we're going to be working out and making sure that we have details. Next slide. Well, that's the end. So any follow-up questions on your part? Because at this point, my recommendation to you tonight is to ask for the passage of this new start time. We will, no, it's not. Okay, I'm gonna back up for that. We'll talk about recommendations in a minute. But any questions you have?
I think you kind of answered it. How soon are we gonna vote to pass this?
All right, I'm gonna let Dr. Myers talk.
So one of the things that we do want to do, and Anthony mentioned earlier, before we get to that part, what I heard Laura ask is if it doesn't work out timing wise with District 75 with balancing between the two districts to maintain the routes, what are the alternatives that we have? So before the board would vote, I would recommend to the board, I'd want to hear from you to say, do you want us to come back to you with alternatives for being able to make this schedule happen regardless of what 75 does, and know what those implications would be? And what that means is we would need to see about transportation essentially, what the cost for the transportation would be, and get confirmation from the bus company that they could get the buses and have the staff. So before voting to do this, I believe it's our responsibility to say to you, it will be X, and this is how it can happen.
Another quick question. Now, we allowed sophomores to drive to school this year, right?
We did.
We did.
That's unusual. We typically do not have enough parking spaces to allow sophomores to drive.
I was thinking, is that another option that would alleviate some of the bus riding if you could allow sophomores, but if we don't have parking, that might be a moot point.
We have 400 spaces and we do fill them.
Okay.
And we usually have a wait list of juniors and seniors.
Can you also look at, you already do it with Lincoln, but Fremont owns their own buses and some of them are probably free in the afternoons and things because the whole school's not using them. I think you could probably talk to Robertson and see about if there's any availability with them. So
So it's one of the things that we're wanting to look to do. So we used to share buses with another school district also to see if there's any combinations of that. So thank you.
To Kevin's question, I think what should be driving the decision here is 100% what's best for the students. And I, for one, think that this is 100% what's best for the students, regardless of how we have to make it happen. So I would absolutely say if District 75 is on board, I would love to hear what our options are to make it happen on the way.
Okay. So if 75 is able to make it work for them, that's an easy choice.
Yes.
If it doesn't work, we need to bring to you in June, what are the alternatives that we can do to make it happen?
Another quick question.
Agree as a board?
I was gonna say,
Or Linda, you got questions?
well, when you presented this a few months ago, granted, we were somewhat of a different board, we were supportive, very much supportive, and the data that you've shown and the research you've done since then has only
Solidified our support.
solidified that. So unless our new board members have a different position,
No, I love it. I'm just curious logistically so right now you've got kids at school an hour before school even begins. Or 45 minutes. So are the buses dropping off the high school kids first right now and then going and getting the
Yes,
little
that
ones?
is what
So
happens.
in theory, they'd get the little ones and then they bring the big ones.
correct.
So it's just a flip flop. Yeah, because it sounds like a supervision challenge,
Yes.
an hour before an MV. Okay.
Okay, so I think the
Yeah.
board speaks, we supported this idea before based on all the research, my own children,
Yeah, you guys are used to
that we
it.
would love to see this happen.
I'm good. Thank you very much.
I love it.
Yeah,
Teachers
my-
still to
my
get
kids-
together every morning.
My kid's bus pickup was like 6:15 in the morning.
Myself. Also from school once.
All right,
Yeah.
next,
Once.
Yeah. One time.
Right. This is a really short presentation. There's a lot to it.
Walk back and forth the full 6 hours.
All right. All right, well, thank you guys for having me tonight. Well, you sounded like a dean of students there.
Sorry
Saw
about
the
that.
supervision.
I literally, honestly, there's been times I'm driving home and I'm like, why are those buses still doing it? MHS?
Yeah, I might have. shuffled a little bit of supervision
Sorry.
In the background. So.
could
in
you,
your- in
could
your-
you just take a minute and explain your role to the new board members?
Yeah, well, my name is Mike Pelt. I'm the assistant principal at the high school. Thank you. So in your board packets, you have the formal, I believe you have the formal proposal. So I'm here on behalf of myself and Tom Unick, Megan Barger, and Paul Thatcher. We came up with this proposal together and we ran it through our PLT. If you just want to go to the next slide. So in the formal proposal, it talks about, the Illinois State Board of Education last year made some emergency adjustments to their graduation requirements. They are not doing that this year. So let me give you, it's in the board packet, it's not up here. But for example, they basically made it that last year's senior class could not pass anything they were in at the time. So they had, instead of 4 credits of English, they only needed 3.5. Instead of 3 credits of math, then you only need 2.5. So everything went down 0.5 credits. So those second semester seniors in the class of 2020, it was a rough year for those students. So they got hit really hard at the end of the year. ISB made it so those kids can graduate. They allowed us to make some adjustments to our graduation requirements, which we did, and which allowed our students to graduate on time. ISB has not done that this year. Okay, so in our opinion, and these are student services admin that was part of this with me, we feel like this class might have had it worse. So they went through the same exact thing those seniors went through last year in the end of the semester, but they've now had 3 semesters where second semester last year was rough. And then some of the students have still not even been back to the building, right? None of them were back to the building first semester, and then some of them came back this semester. So before I know this will be a question, and I know it's in there, this is only for the current students in the class of 2021, and the students that are still, we do have a few students from the class of 2020 still in our building. Okay, so that's who we're talking about. I'm not coming back next year to say, hey, these students, remember 2 years ago when these students went through this? This class has not had time to catch up. Hopefully we get back normally next year, and then the sophomores that went through it will have had adequate time to catch up with the graduation requirements. So I did not put this part in the proposal, but I wanted to make sure you could see what our graduation requirements currently are, and what we are proposing for them to be for this class and any students that are still here from the class of 2020. In bold, you see the things that are different. Okay, so our current graduation requirements are 22. We would like to reduce it down to 16. We would still keep, which is you have to still have 4 units of English, still have to have 3 of math, 2 of science. We currently have 2.5 of social studies, social science. ISB only requires 2.0. So we are above the requirement typically, just like we're above the requirement typically for overall credits. And then one more thing is, this is not really well known, but consumer ed. So you have to have 9 weeks of consumer ed according to the ISB graduation requirements, but you don't have to pass it. You have to take 9 weeks of consumer ed. Now, before there's any questions, I can tell you right now, most of our seniors have already had their 0.5 credits of consumer ed. You don't typically wait till second semester senior year to take it. So that is very few students, but I would still like for that to be part of the proposal. So again, we would go from 22 to 16, 2.5 social studies to 2 social studies, and then participation in consumer ed instead of the 0.5 consumer ed. Okay, so if you go to one more slide.
Before you go, can I ask
Yeah,
a silly
yeah,
question? Why
yeah.
does the math not add up? That's probably a silly question, but there's not 22 units.
Yeah, no, there's more. So this, that's the next slide.
Okay.
It's the actual requirement. So this, I was just comparing to what we do now. So this is, you have to have, and then there's elective credits.
Okay.
So basically basically the 22 down to 16 is mostly, it's elective credits is what we're basically, letting the students not have to pass. Okay, if you go to the next slide. All right, so what it would look like is 4 credits of English, 3 of math, and I kind of made this so it shows what classes we actually offer. So yes, this is the ISB requirements, but I kind of made it look like it's ours because you have to have 1 credit of algebra, 1 credit of geometry, and then 1 more credit of math. So the 3rd credit of math could be any math class, okay? But one of them has to be algebra, one of them has to be one with geometry content. 2 credits of science. Within the social studies, you have to have 1 of US history, you have to have a civics course, which for us is government, and you have to have 0.5 for us, will be 0.5 of another social studies. And the Constitution test is also a requirement. 1 credit from any of the following, that's an ISB requirement, and mostly our electives. 7 semesters of PE participation, which is currently part of our graduation requirements, 1 semester of health participation. And then you see in the bold there, again, 1 semester of consumer education participation. And then that would be a minimum of 16 total credits. So yes, all the core classes, they're still having to pass. The only core class that we're reducing is 2.5 social studies to 2.0. The rest of the reduction comes from electives. And again, I'm not discounting electives. So anyone listening, if it's a teacher, electives are important, but that's not part of the ISB graduation requirements right now. So they only require 1 unit, 1 credit from electives. So we would still require 4 credits of electives because there's 12. If you add up the numbers, there's 12, and then we would have 4 electives that we would still require. Sorry, it's a lot.
Essentially, someone who was in good standing and coming into this year.
Yeah.
Could get 16 credits without, and this.
Yeah,
I
so
think-
this
I
one,
think you said
this is
that-
only the class of 2021 and 2020. This is not early grads. Okay,
And that's not what I'm asking. I'm just saying that the drop from 22 to 16.
Yeah.
Could be a whole year. They could have missed a whole year and made this, correct?
correct. Yeah, we have students right now that are juniors that right now have 16 credits.
But they probably don't have 4 of English already.
No, so yeah, that's a good point. So yes, we have seniors that are current seniors, or we have some second semester juniors that already have 16 credits, but they don't have 4 credits of English because they haven't taken their 4th year of English yet. So yes, but again, there are students that are, if you look at the packet, at the time I made this, because it's very fluid, there were about 85 students on the bubble at risk of not graduating. That's a problem. And I'm not trying to say we're doing anything wrong, and we're not alone in this. There are some other schools that have already done this in the area, Grays Lake being one of them. Round Lake is one of them. I know Warren is doing it. I don't know if it's already passed their board. We're not alone here. It would have been nice if Bisbee would have done it. They did not. I did try to call them to find out why. That's good luck getting those answers sometimes. when you call Bisbee.
So they would have, just to finish my question, they would have had to participate in school in the last year, in this school year, in order to get the English and one of the PE credits. So we are going to be graduating people this year who didn't participate in school at all.
So, yeah,
Correct.
I mean, it's possible. So students of this year, they're students that could have finished their junior year with all these requirements except for the participation in PE and English. It's possible. Now, typically, and I'm not gonna, I don't have the number in front of me, is like, those students that already had that many credits, most of those students are actually, they're doing pretty good right now. Like, they're not, I don't know, I'm going on a limb, because I don't have it in front of me, but I'm guessing there's 0 students that have already met the requirement and they're gonna get 0 credits this year.
Are there any students who are gonna be no-shows for this last calendar year who are gonna graduate?
No, they would already be off our enrollment, so no.
I hear your concern and question,
Thank you.
but I think you're answering it differently than what she's.
Intended.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Interpret the whisper.
I'm not, I want to
Let
make
me
sure I'm
ask
answering
this
the right
question.
question.
I don't know if it'll get to your point, but of those 85 students who are at risk of not graduating.
Yeah.
Can you tell us the consequence that they may experience if they don't graduate versus the consequence is if they do graduate? In other words,
Yeah.
if they don't meet the requirements, what are their options
What are their outcomes?
and what are their outcomes?
Yeah, I mean, right now, we know one of the worst students that don't graduate high school. I mean, that's a huge problem for students. And that's a huge issue. Not just, I mean, it's not for us, it's for those students, right?
Right.
So in the proposal, I'm trying to remember the wording I put in. If you're trying to weigh not graduating high school or you didn't take art, and again, I think I put art, I'm not picking on art. It was just one of the requirements. I think the student, if we're trying to do what's best for students, not letting a kid graduate because they are a couple of elective credits short, and again, I'm not discounting electives. I mean, that is a life-changing experience, not graduating from high school. Students who return in their 5th year, yeah, some of them come back and make it, a lot of them don't come back. You know, they're embarrassed and or they just don't make it through, they get into other things. So it's, if you're weighing them out, or we're trying, like, this is a student services admin request. There's no comparison between I missed a year of music or art or foreign language or business. Again, those are great classes, but not graduating high school is
Not
a
to have a high
life.
school diploma could be more consequential than not having.
Absolutely, it is a life-changing event.
Right, so my other question is do you have last year's juniors as seniors this year who kicked back and did not come to school and will satisfy these requirements? I think that was.
Yeah, and again, I don't have that right in front of me, but the chances, and that's why I said I'm going on a limb. The kids that were already at those credit levels, I don't want to guarantee anything because I don't have the numbers, but the likelihood of a student that has already done everything, they got all the requirements, they already had the same 16 credits, and then doing nothing this year, I don't know any of those kids. The students we have SST meetings about, those aren't the kids we're meeting about right now. It's the kids that were already behind. The kids that had a lot of struggles last year who didn't pass a lot of things second semester and then didn't make up their incompletes. And the other part of this is part of those 85 students that are on the bubble, some of them have met most of the requirements, but right now have an F in English. It's all it takes. I mean, second semester senior year, you fail English unless you took an elective English your first semester senior year and you took 2, which some students do, but not many. Some of the students that have met everything and would be at 22 credits right now are struggling in English. So a lot of those students that should be focusing on passing English to meet the requirements are also in Edgenuity classes or credit recovery system. And they're working on some elective classes because they have 3 classes, 4 classes, they have to pass 5 classes right now. When it could be, let's make sure you pass English. Of course, we want you to pass everything. But let's focus on English first. Let's make sure you meet graduation requirements. And then let's see how many credits we can get you.
And my concern is not about the students who had already achieved these minimum requirements.
Yeah.
And it's not about the students who are working on it. I'm just wondering if because of this unusual year that we've had, have we lost visibility to some students who have been no-shows and that we haven't been able to reach through our best efforts who we're going to graduate? That's my question.
Yeah, you gotta remember, we have a 97% attendance rate online right now. So we're not really losing as many students as what we think. Yes, some students may not have their cameras on. They may not be interacting with the teacher as well, but they're doing their work, they're passing their classes, they're doing what they're supposed to. They may not be as involved and engaged as we would like for them to be. But remember, we do have a 97% attendance rate when you include the kids logging in from home.
Thank you.
So, and that's day to day. So we're not losing kids left and right. And so if there are any, we're talking minimal, but I would actually think there's zero of the senior class that have already met these requirements and are just not doing anything. And will still, and this will let them graduate. I don't think that's the case for any of our schools. Yeah, sorry, it took me a while to answer that. So this is the first time we're here. I don't know if you want to talk about this with me, but,
We don't need approval for, we don't, it doesn't change board policy.
oh, perfect.
But this has to go into.
Yeah, so,
quickly.
I
We're
mean,
asking the
so,
board tonight to waive board policy 6300 temporarily so that we can use the graduation department's proposal that we have showing it go down to 16 just for this year. Right now, once we get down to graduation in May, it reverts, we're right back to our 22 requirements.
again, this would be any students left over from last class and the current graduating class. No students will graduate early. No students from the class of 22 would be able to get, well, again, most of them wouldn't meet the 4 years of English anyway. So we wouldn't let, so this is only from the class of 2021 and class of 2020. Which still,
Do we know why there's been no direction from ISD on?
I called them. I mean, to be
I
honest,
asked that for the purpose of asking it,
yeah,
not expecting an answer.
yeah, I didn't, I reached out. It's really hard to get those answers. I do talk to.
I've seen the consequence on the current senior class be more substantial than the class that's already graduated from last year. It's-
Yeah.
they've been hit from every end. And,
I mean, I'm assuming as we thought they have time to catch up and everything, but I mean, they were virtual. It's.
Right.
you know, I mean,
Well, this would be a life changing event. I mean, I have 2 seniors myself right now, and this would be something that, like you said, to come back, the embarrassment, do we offer anything in summer that they could make up anything? I mean, if they got it incomplete, is there something that we can support them that way?
I mean, we can.
Okay.
The number of kids that come back, I don't have the exact number on top of my head from online. I mean, the success rate for kids that don't graduate on time to come back and graduate, it's not good.
All right, so I think,
Yeah, and I don't know if it's helpful just anecdotally in my own work experience. The district I work in did this about a month ago. The kids that this impacted are the kids who were, I would describe as so overwhelmed trying to pass 6 classes while, and most of the kids that aren't passing all their classes have something else. They're working, there's something funky in the home. So in my experience, what it turned into is, okay, last week Mike had to be passing 6 classes and we're trying to scramble 6 classes and Mike is so overwhelmed, his head wants to pop off. Now Mike only has to deal with English government and PE.
the main,
And now Mike has
Yes,
hope.
and you can focus on those.
Yeah,
You know, so
That's just anecdotally what I saw.
well, I will say, I know
They're really
parents would have said to their children, just pass the classes that you need to. And the electives that you're interested in, we will find it out at a different point. But right now, what you need to focus on is the main.
Just the main, yeah.
And on the other side of things, I mean, there are students that are busting. It's like they are doing everything possible. They're already in a few credit recovery classes because they were behind coming into their junior or senior year. And usually you're in the building all the time, second semester last year, this year, you have a lot of opportunities to catch up. They still have them, but it's very different. And it's been rough on this class. Any more questions?
Thank you. Thanks. Superintendent report, isn't it?
Good evening, everybody. So as we get to talk about the closing of this year, and looking at graduation requirements, we're also going to start foreshadowing into August of 21. Last week, we sent out a survey to our families, letting them know our intention as a school district was to return back to full in person. We did acknowledge that there may be some circumstances that are crisis or emergency type situations that are unique to the families that will be taken into consideration as we look to begin this next school year. So part of this conversation is to also say this publicly at a board meeting, that is our intent. And what we want to be able to do is hopefully get some more guidance from ISB on what the crisis emergency type situations would look like for families. We'll have them go through that process, any families that are in that realm, and to be able to do what we can best to provide some type of an academic programming. One of the things that we are looking at being able to do is when we say come back full in person, that means going back to in person like before pre-pandemic. We do need to anticipate, we still will be having people wear masks while in the building, but we will getting back to our norm. The other part of that means we are not going to look to go concurrent teaching. So what we need to put out there is we are looking at alternatives. If a family wants to be able to use a remote model, we will look at how to be able to provide that remote model while not in a concurrent setting. So that our teachers can focus on who's in the building, which that's the expectation where all of our students are there, except for unique circumstances, and then be able to provide a remote piece. Some of the conversation, and we don't have clarity on this yet, is what does it mean to provide that remote environment? Does that mean the basics of offering an English, math, science, social studies? Or does it mean individualizing it for if the students in the AP, honors, or remedial type course? So that is some of the work that we are doing right now, and also looking for more direction. What we do know is we're pretty confident we'll be able to offer at least the basic minimum of what we need to for a student to be able to continue on. Because part of it is we feel this is also the best we can do under the circumstances while still being able to meet the student and family's needs through that learning model. So we'll look to develop that more and bring that back to you. In the packet, you had a link, and that was a document that we received from the Illinois School Board Association, and it was a return in-person program. It talks about things that you as a board can look for and be able to ask us administratively to do as we continue to go through this process. It really focused on 4 areas: the academics, the social emotional piece, the money piece, and the policies. Going in reverse, I think one of the things that we've done exceptionally well this past year is we really haven't modified any board policies. What we've tried to do is like what you just experienced. If we had to do something, temporarily waive it, because we don't want to make that the standard for how we operate as a board and what we produce academically. So policy-wise, we'll bring those to you. You'll have committee members, but we've stayed status quo. Money-wise, every month, Andy's coming up before you, giving you some updates of where we are monetarily wise and keeping you up to date. So you can anticipate getting updates on that from Andy. Big thing is, you just heard earlier, keep asking about how are we using that extra money from ESSER? What are we doing with it? And then looking at creative ways, like you suggested tonight, how can we maybe use that for busing, for example? So those are things for you as a board, you'll be able to share and keep asking for insight as we go along for this upcoming year. And finally, I think much of like what we've done this past year, we pretty much every month had an agenda item in regards to our learning model. So as we look to go into this year on the academic portion with what they say for you as a board to keep looking at, identifying what those indicators are that we want to be measuring to make sure we're still continuing to make progress. I think one of the things that we've done well, we have identified times, meaning we usually set our goals in July. We do a mid-year follow-up, December, January, usually closer to January's board meeting, and then we'll do an end-of-year recap for how we've progressed academically. So those are some of the processes that we've already have been doing that is be shared with you in that document. So I wanted to be able to share that with you as you continue to look through that document. And if you have suggestions, to please share that with us so we can incorporate that into our planning from an administrative side with you for future board meetings. So long story short, we're looking to reopen back to pre-pandemic terms. We're going to look at ways to be able to offer a remote option, and we'll have that process in place that where families do qualify, they'll be able to go through that process. Questions?
Do you have a sense of when we'll hear from, I'm assuming from the state, right? When you talk about families who will qualify, what their parameters are going to be for remote options? Is that a guidance we're expecting from ISB?
We're expecting guidance from ISB to come.
Is
Yes.
there a time frame where you expect that?
We'd hope for the end of May. If we're going to use the past year as a litmus test, I expect we'll get it before August 1st.
Just think of how much effort's been put forth by not just your team, but teachers to adapt and adjust, and families to adapt and adjust, and a board to adapt and adjust. And the last thing we want is 13 more models of
Agreed.
instructional methods. And teaching. So I'd love to see that come soon. I did think that the packet sent out, it provided some good structure, some good guidance, and it provided some different ideas. I don't know how much of those we'll hear necessarily from the school, but to see things in there about how to allocate for the number of tutoring hours per pupil, or to, how to allocate toward your summer programming, or to how to allocate toward technology maintenance and things along those lines. It is the kind of lessons learned based, the benefit of the consequences of COVID. But I think it's all very unique to the school. So it certainly gives us an opportunity to sit down
And if there is a remote piece, will we be able to share resources or maybe programs with neighboring districts that would be helpful to all districts?
So two things. One, if ISB's delaying, what I'd like to see our district do is to put a program in place that we think will work. And to be able to start with that as our model and have that as the plan from whenever we designate that, hopefully the June meeting, leave it that way until we hear further from ISB. So we're able to enact that. Parents have notice and they can plan accordingly. The second part, Laura, you're asking, can we partner? One of the things that's taking place, the Lake County superintendents meet weekly. And we have been at least all year. We are putting together a cohort, and they're going to look at putting together a countywide virtual program.
Yes.
So
that's
that
exactly what I'm thinking.
everybody would be having a similar educational model. It would be the same for families, and we would all agree to it. So,
'Cause then you can pool your resources and come up with the best possible option.
So the model would be something like a CEDO type of model, and there's no legal or policy or any other barriers to doing something like that countywide, right?
well, I'm sure there are.
Well, there are logistical barriers, but
What I think would, why we're working through the regional office of education, Lisa, is we already have intergovernmental agreements, the school districts with them. So if it was funded through them, it would be probably a resolution. We'd come to you as a board saying we're agreeing to pay X per student to send them there, much like what some of their other programs they offer. So that should be the way. We won't have to do anything special legally.
I'll say it one more time. I said it a while back, just for the sake of everybody to hear it. There's nothing better than in-person learning. And there are certainly circumstances that require individuals to receive accommodated approaches to learning, and virtual learning might be one of those. But the high school experience goes so much beyond the academics. And to be disconnected from your high school in a virtual model is one potential consequence. To be disconnected from your community in a virtual model and attending online with students from other communities is, there are pros to that, but there are also consequences to that as well. So I'll restate, I think it's important for our kids to be a part of the Mundelein community, the Mundelein high school, and the experience beyond just the academics. We all know what they've suffered this past 2 classes of modified proms or no proms, or that social side of things. And this packet does a nice job too, picking up on the social, emotional side and monitoring and tracking progress. So
Yeah, I think if we're all in agreement, in the classroom, it's the best place for our kids, so let's hope we get the majority back with our teachers where they need to be.
I think the enthusiasm that we were demonstrating here was the desire to get out of the current,
right.
the concurrent situation.
Yes.
That said, though, providing parents with information to help them make the decision is probably a good takeaway from Peter's point.
Okay, move on to the next one. Establishing dates, place, and time of regular board meetings. This is for your discussion. This is the setting of your board meeting calendar for the rest of the year. So typically, the meetings have started at 6:30 and they are the second Tuesday of the month, unless otherwise noted. So this would be the time that if you wanted to be able to make any adjustments to it, that we could. Anna, can you pull up the calendar?
So Linda, you and I are the new ones. It seemed like it worked for the rest of you, I think, and I'm assuming it still works the same for you guys.
Generally speaking, in terms of Tuesdays, the second Tuesday of the month.
The turnaround from getting the board packet on Friday to being expected to read through it all by Monday noon is challenging. for me. But otherwise.
I mean, if somebody has a conflict, like if it would be better on the first Tuesday of the month or the third Tuesday
Or Wednesday or Thursday.
or Wednesday or Thursday, yeah, I mean, now's the time, we could do it.
I don't have a strong opinion.
I just have one thing that said, in November, I would prefer not to meet on Sunday, the 7th.
Why? We're all available.
It's gotta be a misprint because
Alan doesn't make
the
it.
7th falls on
I
a
think the
Sunday.
Bears are gonna be off. that.
Bears bye week.
Yeah. So it's either the 2nd or the 9th,
probably why we're
otherwise I'm
doing
fine.
Okay. So Mark, your point, what do you,
I just was saying, if it seemed to work for them and she and I didn't have a conflict, it seemed like keeping it the same works. I mean, I don't really have an issue with it. Tuesday at 6:30 seems to work, so.
I liked it when we had dinner.
How
Coming
is
back.
May 3rd the second Tuesday of the month? Or June 7th
Some of them are the
Or April
1st, but
or April 5th?
Yeah, most of these are the first.
the 1st or the 2nd is really it.
because you're on the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You're trying to do it.
The week begin, it's a short week, and that's why they consider it, like April is 1, 2, 3, it's 5 weeks in April. But second week is the 5th. The first week starts the 1st.
But I didn't think we were saying the week, we were saying the second Tuesday is what I
Right,
thought.
but it's like April of next year is 5 weeks, 5 weeks in the month of April. So that second week would fall April 2nd.
I think it's just the way it's phrased. It's not,
Right.
Oh, it's-
Right.
it's just, it
the
says
second
on the
Tuesday,
second Tuesday of each month.
Not second week.
It's
Right,
just,
it's not
so it's
second
the
week,
second
it's second
Tuesday.
Tuesday, which would be different.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just the way it's phrased. I'm fine with, we've been doing it. Anyone else? Let's just kind of go around. Everybody okay with where we're at?
It would be helpful if it was the way it's stated, the second Tuesday, that's easy to know. Look at your calendar, go, okay, this is the second Tuesday of the month, as opposed to what's the second week and is it partial week? And I'd rather leave it the way it's stated here, but fix the dates. Because our October 5th is not the second Tuesday of October.
Yeah, there's several that would not.
It'd just be easier for me to keep straight, but that's, if everybody's all right with these, I'll go with these two. but-
Well, I will say you will get a email every time that you'll need to accept. And Anna gives a reminder phone call just to make sure everybody's attendance.
If you don't get a Friday for the board, then you know it's a board meeting.
Unless you're like, like holiday dates with us.
I'm fine with Tuesdays. Tuesdays are fine.
You writing all that down?
Best I can. So I got Anna. My backup.
What are District 75 meetings? Board meetings?
They determine those on May 18th, so they're the back end of the month, so they're either the third. We try to make them at least 2 weeks after the 120 meeting, so it gives us a week in between.
By design, that works for you
Yes.
guys.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm for sure, definitely.
Probably is better that we got a lot of early dates there. We've got some more.
When it can't work.
Yeah, when you got leeway between.
Okay,
Second Tuesday is gonna look like work for the 13th.
those dates should be fine then.
Yep.
And you get calendar invites to the meeting, so.
Yeah, exactly. You'll get an invitation and you can program them all into your phone so that it sets a reminder for you. to meet it. We are changing the June meeting.
It's not on here, but we are gonna get to that. yes.
Okay, never mind.
So if we're done on that topic, Next one is for you as a board.
Is this what we agreed to? I'm confused on what we ended up with. These dates?
These dates,
With the November correction.
Okay.
She's got that on cost.
Oh, it's already corrected.
Yeah,
November
sure
9th.
is. Okay, thank you.
So we'll have to figure out how to say the verbiage better.
the
than-
verbiage should
than
be
second,
different, yeah.
'cause it's not always the second Tuesday.
On Tuesdays.
On the second Tuesday of the month,
On Tuesdays,
On
early in the
Tuesdays.
month.
Unless otherwise
That's
designated.
more
On
accurate.
Tuesdays before the.
On the
third
dates
Tuesday.
defined,
Yeah. How about on the first or second Tuesday?
just on the dates listed, as listed, yes.
I think the
As
only reason that might
listed.
be important is because on the Mundelein webpage,
If it says second Tuesday.
It'll say, yeah,
If community.
Yeah.
member.
Yeah,
The date won't be the same.
so I would say on the dates listed, and just, we know it's always
Exactly.
gonna be a
so we can
Tuesday,
figure it out.
so we know.
Um,
And I know. Always check our calendar,
So we'll put, board meetings be held on the dates listed below.
yes.
Okay. So the next item then we have is the Illinois Association of School Boards Resolution Submissions. Board members should have received a document with that, and what that is, as a board, you can submit any kind of a resolution that you'd like for them to consider as a potential board policy down the road. And that process would be held at the conference, which is our next topic. That would be considered potentially to be something they would pursue towards becoming a policy. So what am I talking about? Some of the resolutions that come forward to be like regulating board policy with popular one, gets a lot of people fired up, whether or not staff should be able to have handguns or not in the classroom. Some school boards came together with a resolution, said you should be able to do that. Other school boards have come forward and put proposals together, whether or not you can require to have students have extra time on the playground. Some might be in regards to amount of papers that you want to have copied per classroom. I mean, you can come together and create any kind of a proposal for a resolution that you want. Ultimately, it's something that you believe in and that you think would be put in place within your board policy.
Well, another way to think about it too is that what these resolutions are doing is telling the Association of School Boards how to lobby at the State House. So it's the school board's opportunity to set the agenda for what gets debated in Springfield.
You don't need an answer for that now. But take your time, think about it. It's something that you want to go discuss. Let's bring that back to the June meeting. We would need to come to an agreement on that, or you would by the end of that meeting, because any proposals do need to be submitted, or at least a plan of action, by June 23rd. Okay? All right, another board topic.
Yes.
Annually, the National Association, the Illinois School Board Association with the Illinois Association of Business Officials and School Administrators come together. That's how it gets the name Triple I Conference. They meet down in Chicago in November, usually the weekend prior to Thanksgiving. That will be November 19th through the 21st. This is a joint conference. The purpose of it is to be able to have board members attend, where they get to attend sessions. Over the Friday through Sunday, usually, there's guest speakers that open up all three sessions. And then there's a bunch of panels that are available every day with a bunch of different topics that you're able to select, go and attend. It's a great opportunity for networking for you as board members. It's a great opportunity for you to have that weekend time to be able to get together and kind of get to know each other. Because outside of the board meetings, you really never get that opportunity to talk. So why this is coming to you now is they have told us, School Board Association, they're going to hold the conference. So we need to find out from you, do you want to attend? If you do, who wants to attend? And then take it from there, because we'll need to get you signed up for it. What it usually entails. Historically, most board members have went down usually on Friday, everything's taken care of, get a hotel. On Friday, then you attend conference sessions. We'll usually either have a sponsored meal, either on Friday for dinner or Saturday for dinner. Spouses or significant others are welcome to attend that. And then you attend the sessions on Saturday. We usually try to get together on Saturday for lunch, and then on the sessions people attend. And then after that, you attend the Saturday afternoon sessions and then the Sunday morning. And it's usually done Sunday morning around noon after the closing session. And they've got vendors that are there at McCormick Place, and you can walk around and see that different third-party providers, whether it's roofs, buses, electronical technology devices, anything you could possibly imagine. Right now, though, it's been more than a year. You decide, think who might or want to be willing to go.
And I will say, just, and many of you have attended with me, there are many conferences where you would easily be able to do 6-foot social distancing, you know, depending on the number of attendees they have for the session that you chose. So, if that's like a concern, or if that's something would make you don't feel pressure to go or not go. It's completely your choice this year. It's been a challenging year in so many ways, and but I think there are ways that I know I've attended a lot of sessions that you don't have to go to the most. They have some wonderful speakers usually, but they may not have those, and I might be an adjusted schedule this year as well.
Right.
I don't know exactly who's all gonna present or what they're gonna offer.
Right.
So, I personally would like to go.
You know,
I'd like to go. I've been the last, other than last year when it was canceled, I've been the last 5 or 6 years.
It's very valuable for new board members to go and either go through the initial, some of the initial conferences, or just get viewpoints from districts that are handling the same things that we're dealing with, whether it be equities, you know, there's just a lot of topics that they cover that you never have quite that same uninterrupted time to do.
Do you guys take care of getting the rooms for us set, or, okay? And then do you guys also, do you ever attend the national ones? We used to go, a couple of us would go to national on occasion. here and there.
We have not done the national one.
I got more out of that than the triple I one personally. That was more beneficial, in my opinion, as a board member. I know there's one in April, or yeah, it's April 2023 or 22. I mean, moves around every year. This April, I believe it's San Diego. So,
I'd expect we'd have a lot of post-pandemic topics. that would be very
Yeah.
Interesting and relevant.
So I guess what I would ask them, right now, I have Laura Vogt, Laura Mellon, and Mark Ponce that would be willing.
That's
Oh,
all.
I think
The board.
I think the
Got
yeah, I
it.
saw everybody.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Everyone. Okay. Start making arrangements. Last one, my area. So right now, the board has a meeting scheduled for June 15th. Making a request that we could have that on June 8th. Instead, that is a week earlier. That was originally scheduled to be a joint board meeting, but there are a number of items like the updated schedule for next year, the start time. Want to get that back to. Also have, oh my gosh, I just blanked. No, item I have.
the budget,
New start time.
he mentioned the start.
Yeah, I had the start time, budget. There's one other thing I had where we separated it out. Oh, academic programming. So as we look to what to do in August, so we start planning for that and share that with you as well. So they're just, the topics are too different and interests are different, so.
It is the second Tuesday.
So we're going from the third Tuesday to the second Tuesday?
We're making a correction, yeah, we're gonna go to the second Tuesday
I will say right now,
Of the month.
of the month.
okay, I will not be able to attend that due to an event that I cannot miss. Hopefully you can fill me in before I go.
Can do that. Peter, you'll be taking over presidential duties next month.
We're not having board members at the graduation.
Huh? Did we find anything else about graduation, Dr. Crow?
Did we find out anything more about it? Well, we have 2 sessions, we're gonna do 2 different ceremonies, 8 and 11, I'm sorry, 11 and 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Split the class in half. We're offering 4 tickets per family. The only thing that would change us at this point is if the governor moves us to the bridge to phase 5 this weekend, next week. Somewhere between now and graduation. And we can either do 1 or 2 things. We can either offer more tickets in our current plan on campus, or we could go to the Sears Center and do what we typically do with the Sears Center.
One session there, though.
What's that?
One session there.
1 session there. But we put a lot of time and effort right now into our plan on campus. And kind of would like to see that one happen, so it would allow us to maybe offer, 7 tickets. For,
Is
per
our
family.
plan weather dependent?
It is, we will delay, if we can't do it Sunday afternoon or Sunday, we do it on Monday,
The 24th.
the 24th. That's what we've said at this point. There's been 1 or 2 other suggestions. Kind of run into the same problems. It's usage of the it's trying to accommodate everybody and get everything in. Right now, if we were to do anything on Saturday, we won't be able to get both sessions in on Saturday due to athletic events that we already have scheduled. We could try to move some of those, but not everything gets easily moved, so.
Can you accommodate all board members if we were to show up for these 2?
Yes, we actually have cap and gowns for all of you. I'm hoping that all of you will be able to hand deliver the diplomas on stage. And we're not going to be sitting on stage, but we're going to be sitting off stage. But there'll be an opportunity for each of you to go up and hand the diploma cover. We're not going to handshake, but we'll, if we need to, we do have a sanitation station right immediately after getting off stage. And then we have a good number of staff who are graduating seniors this year too. So they'll be
Got a
also,
couple board members that have some.
and we have
graduating
board
seniors.
members who have graduating seniors.
Well, Lauren, the original question, yes. Board members may attend, so you do want to be involved in the graduations, you're more than welcome to be at both sessions, the 11 and 2. Or if there's only one you're able to be at, just because of your own life, things are going on with your family, it's fine. So if you would, you can let me or Anna know if you can attend.
If there were a shift, how would that get, how would that information get? I have had parents come up and ask, numbers of tickets, or I've heard discussions of alternative venues indoor. So what, I mean, I feel like this has been the entire last 16 months, but as we anticipate the next what is graduation, 3 weeks?
3 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks.
So if there's some announcement from the governor within the next 4 to 5 days, we may have a response or a no response from the district, or what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that? Just so I can.
We'd follow up on it, the way it sounded like we'd like to hold it still at the high school.
Mhm.
And what the announcement from the governor would do, would allow us to increase the number of guests each student could bring.
I
So-
personally like the idea since the plan is set and it's out there and I've counted on, I mean, I know parents I've spoken to too. Like, some are really, they like the idea of having it here at Cumberland.
And the Sears Center is holding it open for us? I mean,
They're probably not super busy right now.
Yeah, there isn't anybody could go there.
it would save a lot of money.
No, not going over there.
Not going, we would save money.
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, if there's an announcement, we can tell people we're gonna
Yeah.
still staying here, looking at increasing the number of tickets.
Did I miss who was attending?
No, I asked them to let us know.
I'll be there.
11 and 2. Split by all.
May 23rd, 11 and 2.
And then if it's the Monday, what time is it?
Yeah.
Right.
I got it written down somewhere.
But in the evening or day?
It'd be afternoon, and evening.
Okay, thank you.
So if you give me the times for the 24th as the backup, then we can send that out, okay?
There wouldn't be a
If- if
scenario
it-
where we can increase the number of tickets, but also combine it to one. Is that correct at the high school?
We won't be able to,
We don't have
That
enough
threshold.
room to do all the students at the high school in one ceremony.
correct.
Okay.
We don't have enough space.
Because I've heard that, I mean, we're gonna hear every angle of it, but for kids to not
That's generally where we end up with the
be
six,
with their
seven.
buddies, I've heard that.
We wouldn't have the parking for that either.
Yeah. so
Sure.
we always-
Yeah.
Parking would be probably a bigger issue.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So
All right. So the next thing, we have on the agenda is the committee and representative appointments. So last meeting, we spoke about what different committees were available and what everyone would be interested in and what we might have time for based on the time commitments of those committees. So why don't we just kind of go around and see, I know Laura Mellon, you wanted to do press policy or legislative.
Legislative, mhm.
Okay, so we'll put you in there.
Finance and facility.
Okay, either wanted to do finance and facilities. There's room for 2 members on that particular committee. Would anyone else be interested in that,
I
Lisa?
also requested that one.
Okay. Shared services was me.
I'd be interested in doing that one as well.
Okay. CDOL.
I'd be interested in that.
Thank you. Community outreach. Now, it says we have 2 committee members available. And you can disagree, or if you want to do this, I think that's something that we can all just do. I don't know that we necessarily have to have it on a committee member basis.
I agree.
Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah, just
That if you
if
go to
anyone's
something
seen
at the
anything.
school and you see, or you attend a theater production or a band or sports or whatever you happen to go to, just share it, what you've heard. Okay. Press policy,
Is it weird that I find that interesting?
not at all, and we are so thankful.
Yes. Please.
All right,
We owe you for that one.
yes, we do. We owe you for that one. I
I think we should be
personally am
honest
very
and say yes.
appreciative. I've done press policy. All right, MHS Foundation.
I'd like to do that one.
Aaron, put you on that one. Sick bank. Since that's limited, I will take that one. And IASB delegate. Since we're all going, I guess who would have the interest to go to the,
You know, I've done it before and I think it's really cool. I would suggest anybody else who plans to be down there, everyone should go once. It's pretty cool. Paddles and boats and stuff.
You need to
Yeah.
assign somebody though.
yep.
Yeah, but I just want to suggest,
Yeah,
because I've done it, I suggest
If no one
everyone
else
try
wants
to
it,
go
I'll do it.
once.
No one else would want to do it.
Okay, go for it, Lloyd. All right, Marshall, come back in there. All right, well, that looks like that's taken care of. Now. Thanks,
I
everybody.
think
for-
that one of the things we talked about last week was kind of stepping back and saying, this is a moment to say, is this everything we need or is there anything else? And I'm wondering if there's anything that's still following up on or tracking from the pandemic or any of those committees or any of that, or are those all done?
I think it's one of those things that if something comes up and there's a need, we would know it in the case, but to, kind of find something right now would be hard, but we may all of a sudden next year realize that we need to have a committee for like, and that's when I think it would be more appropriate to figure one out.
So I'll toss an idea out too, because my involvement on the metrics and Warren as well.
Mhm.
I mean, we've met on a weekly basis to review data, to look at mitigation measures, efforts, to continually analyze the school's response, to really be informed with not just the data and the science, but the community kind of tone. And I think having a board member or 2 on there helped us stay informed of where we were, but also kind of kept us in touch with staff and teachers, but also community. So I don't know that there's an intention for any of those committees to persist, but I do think about the return to school planning. And I don't know if there's a way for the board to not just be informed, but be more of a
Active
participant in that kind of committee, but that there may not necessarily be a committee right now either. So maybe something we need to.
Speaking to Laura and your point, I know mental health of our students and the impacts, the long-term impacts on a lot of our students of what they've gone through and what they've experienced. I don't know that it's necessarily a committee job, but I would like to hear, and I have this for my presidential prerogative, of how can we help our students kind of get back to the new normal after they've gone through this? Because, you know, that was quite a, for our especially for freshmen and that, and like I said, I don't know if it's a committee job, but I would like to know, you know, what measures are being taken and how we're trying to support our students, because I know that's gonna be a topic.
So we can bring that up. So I think there's a couple things. A, when you talk about committees, those would be committees that as a board, you'd want to say either a long-standing committees, like you have with the shared services committee would be one, versus ad hoc committees that you might want to have. Where if you said you'd want to have a committee that you'd want to be able to compose, that would be able to go through social emotional learning processing. It's a little bit different. What I'm hearing you say though is if, as we continue through this process of transitioning next year, as if we have a committee that comes together to pull a board member to be on that.
I would
Right.
have that be a suggestion from the board to strongly consider. I don't know if it's necessarily our point to say to your, that, I mean, I guess it is. But I think there was benefit to
Yeah.
board involvement in some of that complex process.
And I think it's helpful for the board who, you know, when you're out in the community, to know, like I was on the committee for the Kevin Quinn with the mitigation measures we were taking within the school. So it was helpful for me to really be right there. I knew what we were doing. I'm very confident. These are all the steps we're taking and this is why we're doing it. So to have that presence, the knowledge to share with our community is helpful. So,
So maybe one of the most challenging things that a board and working with a superintendent can do is where's that fine line? Because it's one of those things, I agree with you. And purposefully, when we know we are going through some very unique times, it's essential that you're in the mix much more as individuals than when you come together as a collective whole. It makes a lot of sense. I also want to reiterate though, you can't think back to before the pandemic.
Right.
And the involvement of the board in the school system wasn't as much as what we're doing. It wasn't sitting in by side planning out what we thought we needed to do to reintegrate our students coming back in. It was coming back to as a board saying, we've met, here's who we've met with, here's why we thought this way, and here's the plan. So. I
And
think
that's my hesitancy in
Right.
suggesting it, but at the same time, having recognized the role and the benefit of the purpose of it. So I guess I'm putting it out there as more as a suggestion for consideration, should there be an identified need.
Well, and
Personally,
maybe-
I feel like the role is for the time it was needed, but I feel like coming back to the new norm, I agree. I think that's a little bit overstepping, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We should be in their business, we should let them run and come to us, and that's my viewpoint. on this.
okay, and to that point too, maybe we can just have, if there's a topic that you'd like an update on, we can let we can let you know, like, I'd like to hear about what we're doing for this particular subject.
Sure.
And then you can just give us an update at the meeting.
I think as a bit of a proactive step too, we're also seeing now schools were able to make decisions and go ahead and make them, and now everything's turned into a survey.
Right.
I would like to see things move away from that a little bit, and I think part of that is, as a board proactively saying, we're gonna trust in the administration.
That is
To
a
make
very good
decisions.
point. There's a
That's
lot of
appreciated.
surveys.
There weren't surveys 2 years ago like there are now.
I can share, that when we see the need, I definitely, I'm gonna incorporate, I'm gonna tap in your skills and say, hey, here's something we're doing. I want to pull you in
Right.
and be able to do that. Because I do think it's important that you are informed. And I think it's also very important, if you don't feel you're informed, or you feel there's a void, he just needs you to call. And we'll do everything we can so you feel like you're up to speed. Because obviously, if you don't feel you're up to speed, somebody else on your team doesn't either. And we've got to provide that to you.
Well, we've done pretty good last year. Let's.
Okay.
If we need information, everyone just ask.
Yep.
All right, so we've taken care of the committee and the representative appointments. Next thing we have is the board action items. All right. Everyone ready?
Get your action items.
Yes.
Okay.
So the first one is the resolution for transfer from the operations and maintenance fund to the debt service fund. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education of Mundelein High School District 120 approve the resolution for the transfer from the operations and maintenance fund to the debt service fund in the amount of $646,425. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Australia,
Yes.
Wellington, yes. Yaffe,
Yes.
vote,
Yes.
Mellon,
Yes.
Ponce,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes. Next one is the resolution approving band uniforms, financing, and authorizing execution thereof. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education of Mundelein High School District 120 accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the resolution approving band uniforms, financing, and authorizing execution thereof as presented. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mellon,
Yes.
Ponce,
Yes.
Australia,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
Wellington, yes. Yaffe,
Yes.
vote,
Yes. Next one is the 2020-2021 tentative amended budget. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education of Mundelein High School District 120 accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the 2020-2021 tentative amended budget as approved.
So moved.
Second.
Mellon,
Yes.
Australia,
Yes.
Ponce,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
Wellington, yes. Yaffe,
Yes.
vote,
Yes. The next one is approval to temporarily waive school board policy 6.300. Recommended motion that the Board of Education of Mundelein High School District 120 accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve a temporary waiver of school board policy 6.300 for this graduating class. May I have a motion? Seconded.
Second.
Ponce,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
Wellington, yes. Yaffe,
Yes.
vote,
Yes.
Mellon,
Yes.
Australia,
Yes.
Well, the next one is establishment of dates, place, and time of regular meetings. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education of Mundelein High School District 120 adopt the establishment of regular meetings of the Board of Education be held at 470 North Lake Street, Mundelein, Illinois, at 6:30 p.m. as listed on Tuesday of every month unless otherwise specified.
So moved.
Second.
Mellon,
Yes.
Australia,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
Wellington, yes. Yaffe,
Yes.
vote,
Yes.
Ponce,
Yes.
Last one for tonight right now is recommendation to reschedule a regular board meeting date. The recommended motion is that the Board of Education of Mundelein High School District 120 accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve rescheduling the regular board meeting for June 15th, 2021 to June 8th, 2021. I have a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Australia,
Yes.
Ponce,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
Wellington, yes. Yaffe,
Yes.
vote,
Yes.
Mellon,
Yes.
Right. Next thing is I need a motion. The Board of Education meeting will now adjourn and enter into executive session at, we don't,
8:09.
You have to read the motion.
okay, so the board will enter into the executive session to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of the public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. Litigation, when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting. Discussion of minutes is lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act, whether for proposed approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by section 2.06. So the Board of Education meeting will now come to order at, Secretary, please state the time.
8:11 PM.
Make the motion.
Motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Rastrelli,
Yes.
Conce,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
Wellington, yes. Duffy.
Yes.
Oates.
Yes.
Mellon.
Yes.
There you go.
If anyone needs to use the restroom,